All right, everyone. Welcome to class 13, the penultimate class of this semester, Recording Studio Fundamentals. So we're pretty light in terms of attendance. Hopefully people will show up. So we're probably only going to do till about 6:15 today. Hopefully you'll be having something for me to look at tomorrow when I get up, and I can spend time going through your first draft of your final project, and rather spend a little bit of time there rather than here, because we've gone through pretty much everything we need to go through this semester. So today is going to be basically a review class, starting from the very beginning and just getting, as far as we can, and then I'll continue on with some general thoughts next week after I look at everybody's first draft of the project, and I can give them feedback, and then I'll also know what things we need to focus on for the last class. Are there any questions that anybody has before I continue on, though? Yes.
Hi, Professor. Your voice is echoing. Is it in purpose?
No, it's not supposed to echo. I don't hear the echo here.
Really?
Interesting. Let me see something here. All right, let me just see if I can figure that out. Is that better? Okay. So, all right, let me just show you. It's something to teach. So yesterday I was recording something, and this is the console for my audio interface. And I was recording something where I wanted to monitor using reverb. So I had this up like this. So when I hooked everything back up, I had this turned down, but I still had this up, and now you're hearing the echo again, right? Yeah, okay. So, yeah, you just have to be careful with what you're doing. All right, so we're here now, and let's picture this. Okay, so starting from the top, if you've got Apple computer, right, you'll find your Pro Tools software right here. What I typically do is I take it and I drag it onto my dock so that it's on my dock. Right, let me just do this. Let's see, quit Pro Tools. So it's on my dock, so I have easy access. So I just click on this and Pro Tools will open. Now, the first time Pro Tools opens, you'll get this little splash window, and it scans through all the plugins that you have. So if you've got third-party plugins, it has to make sure that they're all working with Pro Tools. And the very first time that you boot up, even after the very first time you boot up, it takes longer because it scans through all of those plugins. And once it's sure that they're okay, it doesn't have to take as much time the next time it boots up. But let's say that you install a new plugin. The next time Pro Tools opens, it will take a little bit longer because it has to, just go through that one new plugin and give it a little extra attention to make sure that it's okay. So this is called the dashboard right here. And you want to do create. Now, this is where you name something. We'll just skip over this for a minute. And this is where you want to make sure that everything is set up correctly. So we're using broadcast wave files, 24-bit, and we are using sample rate of 44.1 kilohertz. I usually have that as interleaved. And then what you want to do is set prompt for location. And then you'll create your session. You'll have to name it. So let me just name this RSF 5-4-22. And then it opens this up. So I'm going to close this for a second. And I'm going to open up a new one. Now, one cool feature of this dashboard is that it has this thing called recent. And then you can see right here that these are all the recent projects that I've been working on. So this way, if I wanted to open up something that I've been working on, rather than searching through my project drive to find it, it's right here. So it just saves me time. So let's say I wanted to, open up this session here. I could just click on that and it will open it up. Right, so it opens it up. I didn't have to go searching for it, the session folder. It was right there. Now, the other thing is that there's something called projects. This is where you store things in the cloud, and if you want to collaborate with people. I don't really go over that because personally I don't use that. So I don't really know what that is. So I don't want to teach something I don't know, which is, okay. So the other thing that you have is you have templates. So if you look here, they've got all sorts of different templates that you can open up, and you can save your own. So maybe I'll show you how to make a template today, which is might actually be good. So if we do songwriter, and it shows you all of these options that Pro Tools has the Avid set up for you. So let's say songwriter, pianist, lower CPU usage. Let's say you've got an older laptop. So let's open that. And on my desktop. Oh, then you want to rename it, right? So you don't, right? So let's see, song 1. Let's see how it opens up. So you see it opens up, right, to this, and it gives you things that you don't need. We don't need this. We don't really actually need the transport at all, but we do need our MIDI controls. And that's good. So it opens up like this, and it gives you a tempo. The conductor track is off because it's, assuming that you're going to create your own tempo. So it's set up to manual tempo at 110, and it gives you a percussion. Now you can change that if you want instead of a metronome. Then it shows you here that, right, they've got a bass track here set up for you, piano track, acoustic guitar, and then vocal track for a male vocalist, a female vocalist, audio, some extra audio tracks. Then, this is a little bit more advanced. And then there's reverbs and delays and choruses. You should really show the inserts and the sends. Right. I haven't taught you how to set up a headphone mix because that's a little beyond the scope of this class. So that's a template that they set up for you. You could just start working right away without having to set up everything. So if you've got acoustic guitar and you want to add, it has reverb already set up. They've also put some delay, but you don't really need that delay. So, yeah, so that's a template. Now let's go back and let's open up a new one, and let's do recent, and we'll do this one here. Okay. So I typically would let's say I want to create a template for just general composing for me, right? So what I do is, let's say I do this, Command-Shift-N, and let's do 6 stereo instrument tracks plus 4 mono audio tracks plus 4 stereo aux inputs. Okay? Now, what we can do is we can input, let's say, let's go to, all right, we can have drums. So we can call this boom. Let's say that we want to have the piano. And then let's see. Ooh. Instrument. So let's do. So we'll have a couple of expand twos. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's say that this is bass. So we'll just get a bass in here. So we'll do maybe a classic double bass. So upright. Maybe I'll just call this upright bass. Okay, and then maybe this will be nylon guitar, right? So it's nylon. And then you'll have a couple of spare instrument tracks, and then you'll have some audio tracks that are all set up, and you want to make sure that the input is all set up to input 1. And then maybe these you got 4 aux inputs. So let's color code these with none. And we'll solo safe all of these. And maybe what we'll do is we'll put in a deverb here, and we'll have a second one, and then we'll have mod delay 3. And then maybe Command-Shift-N, a stereo master fader. And then at the end of the line in the master fader, we'll put the EQ for our level monitoring. Right? And we could turn all these off since we're not going to use them. And then, so this would be a good starting point, right? So, well, actually, this is reverb 1. And then the next is reverb 2. The next is delay 1. And then we need to set up our inputs. So let me do that really quickly. Right, so those are all set up. You might want to rename these properly. I'm just going to leave those be. All right, so you've got this set up. So this gives you a nice starting point. Maybe we'll have the bass be here, and then maybe we'll just do quick color coding. And then leave the other ones as just, they're ready to go. And then, so that everything is there. And then, okay, so now what you could do is you can go to File, Save as Template, right? So let me move this here and, oh, actually, that doesn't really matter. File, let me zoom in. File, Save as Template. And then you get this here. It might come up with one of these. So I added a category, right? And I would just type in a new category. So I could type in PC presets or something like that, right? And so I did that. I have PC templates. So then if I want to do this, I could call this basic rhythm section. Boom. Okay. So now let me close this. And let me open up a new session. and then go template, and then pick my templates here, and then let's go basic rhythm section right here. Create, and then I would just title this properly, whatever I wanted to title it, and then boom, it opens up exactly the way I left it, and I'm ready to go. Now, how do I use templates, right? I don't have a bunch of templates ready to go. What I typically do is, let's say I'm scoring a film. I figure out what the sound of that film is going to be, right? I spend like maybe a week getting prepped. You know, I'm watching the film, I'm listening to music, I'm getting ideas, I'm setting up a session with all sorts of different instruments, trying to find the right sound, maybe, and then I make a demo suite. And then when I'm done with the demo suite, I take that session that I've put together and I save it as I just save it as a different version so that the original one is not touched and I've got a new clean version to work with. And then I clean it up. I order the tracks properly. I get rid of all the data that's on it. I make sure it's just a blank, empty page that has just the instruments on it that I need. And then I save that as a template. So let's go and take a look at this again, and I'll show you what I mean. So let me close this and don't save. And if I go Command-Shift-M, right? And so this is a project I've been working on that I just finished a week and a half ago. So let me open this up. And this is going to take a minute to open up because it's a lot of instruments, all right? All right, one more time. Let me quit Pro Tools. So my audio interface when I'm broadcasting on Zoom has a little problem switching sample rates, so back and forth in Pro Tools. So I work in film at 48K as opposed to what we've been doing, which is 44.1, and that's because that's the industry standard for broadcast. Okay, so I'm going to open this up now, and this should work, no problem. Replace. Okay, so this is version 2. Now this will take a minute. Unless I've set it up so that everything is, oh, right. So, okay. So this is kind of interesting. So do you see how fast that loaded, right? Yeah, I'm sorry. I forgot because this was months ago. But see how many tracks are in this? Right? There's 128 tracks in this session. The reason that it loaded in so quickly is that I have a lot of the tracks inactive so that it doesn't have to load any sample data in. It just opens up the session. So this is another little trick that I do when I'm working and I create a big, huge template like this. I'm sorry, I forgot that I did this with this template because I haven't actually worked on this since last November. But basically, I set this up so that the template can open up really quickly. And then as I need sounds, I just make them available. So let me show you what I mean by that. Okay, so let's say I need... I want to start with this, and I want to start with piano. So I want to start with piano. So I find my piano track, which is right here. It's highlighted. So then, and this is another little trick that I teach also. It's very hard to find things over here. But if you look here in the tracks list, it's much easier to see where things are. And then if you just click on this, it highlights the track that you want to work on. And then you just, once you get there, I just would right click and make this active. And then, oh, come on. And then the piano's ready to go. Right? so I can get started writing with the piano. So let's say I want to do something, and I would change my tempo so that it's slower, because I'm going to just do something here, and then I give myself one measure up front. Oh, excuse me, one measure, not 2 beats. Right, so I just, got my first idea in. Now, all right, so I want to add low strings. So I go right here, make it active. And this is and it's got all the routings all set up and everything. So let's see, where am I? Okay, so I'm going to 2 and 3 and 4 and... Okay, so those are sharp. So let's do this. We want to make them long. And here we go. Okay, right, great. So now what I might want to do is add a solo violin. I've got it right here, make active. And then, this way, like the first couple of minutes may take a little bit of time to get these active, but it's much easier than, it takes less time than loading all the samples in for the whole session. And it also takes less time than adding a new track, because all my routing is done. And so, now... What's up with that? That's fine. Right. And I can just, and I work that way, and it's just much easier for me to do that. And then eventually, once I start getting through this and I see what instruments I'm using, I start hiding the instruments that I don't need, and makes the session much smaller. So, these are just little tricks that I do to speed up my workflow. And, right. So before every project I spend time, I put together a template that works for that particular project. If you look online on YouTube, you'll see a lot of guys that, like, for example, there's a really well-known film composer nicknamed Junkie XL, Tom Holkenborg. He's very, very, very good. He's very successful. He has a template with 1,000 tracks in it, and he has every sound in it. I don't really want to work like that. I want to make sure that every one of my film scores has a unique sound to it. So I want to create the sound for that film and have those instruments loaded in. As I go along, if I find that I'm missing instruments or I need something else, it's very easy to add them. But I don't really want to have this as it is with like 120 something tracks. It's really a bit of a pain in the neck to navigate, but the sound of the score is contained in these instruments. I'm going to turn my air conditioning on because it's getting hot in here. Give me one sec. All right. So templates are useful. I wouldn't say that they're the most useful thing, but they are useful. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning here with our review. Actually, let's leave this open for a second. Let me hide this. All right, so this is what we were just working on, this folder right here. Okay, so this is the session folder. Inside the session folder are all of these other folders that Pro Tools has made, and they're waiting to have assets added to them. So what will be in every session folder will be the session file, and that has an extension of .ptx on it. And then you've got audio files, bounced files, clip groups, video files, and then wave cache. And they come and go depending upon if there is any asset in it. Now, what I want you all to do before you hand in your projects going forward, and that would be today, double check this today so that you might have to re-upload it tonight, is open up your session folder. And if you've recorded audio, make sure there's an audio files folder and click on that and make sure that there's audio files in it. Let me find something here. Yeah. Okay. Right. Okay. So this is audio for editing, right? And this is, I think this is for audio MIDI 1. So if I open this up, say I was handing this in, I would make sure that the audio files folder is in here, and I would double check by clicking here and see all my audio files are in there that are in this particular session, right? And then once you've double checked that, then you can compress this, because if I open the session up, there's nothing in there, but I didn't work on this. But it's just if I had been working on this, everything would be in here and it would be accessible. Let me find this Fix Me. Okay, so this is another session here. Fix Me, please. So, right, there are audio files in here. So if I open this up, it opens up properly. And you'll know that when you hand this in, when you hand that in, because you've seen those audio files in there, that I should be able to open it up properly. All right, so double check, look in your audio. If you've recorded audio for something for today, look inside of of your session folder, right? And again, let me one more time. Let me just do this. Make sure that you close out of the session, right? Make sure you close out of the session, and then you'll see that this audio files folder will stay. If you have not done the audio properly and you close the session, this folder will disappear because there will be no assets in there. So you close out of the session, you open up the session folder, and then you double check your audio files, that folder, that it's there and that there are assets inside of it. And then you compress that parent folder that this is in. Okay, so let's open up a new session. Or let's see, where did I put that? Okay, let me get rid of all these. Okay, so this is, what page is this called? Anybody, you could type it into the chat. This is the edit window, the arrange page, something like that. You know, depending upon the DAW you're using, it might have a, let's say you, after class you switch to using Logic. This might be called the arrange page, right? But it's the page where you have an overview of your project. It contains all your tracks, and it has a timeline. So you'll be able to see all the different aspects of it. Now, this part on the top here, this is called your toolbar. And this is where all your tools are, to put it bluntly. Okay? And you can customize this. And the way that you customize this is that over here on the far right-hand side, there's a circle with a downward-facing triangle, and then you click on that. It gives you all of the things that you need. Now, since we're working with audio files right now, we can have the zoom controls up. We don't need the transport. You need the transport only if you're recording, but once you're done recording, you don't need the transport. In other words, because if you're recording audio, you might need the pre-roll to punch in, like I showed you last week. So once that's done, you can take that off. We do need our MIDI controls, our output meters, and yeah, that's basically it. And then it's good to know how to customize that because of the size of the screen that you have. If you've got a small laptop, well, you might not need to see all those things. But if you've got a larger screen like I do, you can live large and have a lot of those things present. So going from left to right, this upper left-hand corner here contains the 4 different edit modes. And the ones that we've been using are shuffle, slip, and grid. Grid puts everything on the grid, and you select your grid resolution over here, which we will go over in a minute. Slip lets you get in between grid spots, and shuffle is what we used to make things borders snap together. So if we're editing audio and we cut out the middle 2 bars of a 6-bar phrase, what's on the right-hand side after you've cut out those middle 2 bars will snap up against the border of the first 2 bars. Let me show you that. Let me import some audio. I don't want, no, let me not do these because these are copywritten. Yeah, let me just add that in. Okay, so this is at 125, so let me change the tempo. So if I go to my grids, and let's say I want to just get rid of this from 1-3 to measure 2-3. If I go to shuffle, it just snapped to the border on the left. That's a great aid when you're editing. Grid mode will allow you to edit and only select things that are on the grid, and you change your grid resolution up here. So you can set it to 16th notes, you can set it to 32nd notes, 64th notes, dotted, triplet, all of these different rhythmic variations. Now, so in other words, if I want to edit this from here to here, which is 1, beat 2, and the 4th 16th note, to bar 2, beat 2, and the 4th 16th note, I would use my grid to make that very accurate. Then I would shift to shuffle, delete, and boom. Gives you a very nice edit. Slip mode allows you to get in between where the grid is. And this is good. This is good for making crossfades. And this is good also for punch-ins, because let's say you wanted to come in at measure 2, you'd want to set your punch-in point just a little bit before measure 2 in case you jump the gun. You won't, and come in a little early, you won't cut off the beginning of your note. All right. Now, let me show you spot right here. Spot mode. This enables you to place something in an exact spot on the timeline. So I'm going to use the hand tool, the grabber, and I'm going to click here, and spot dialog comes up. And then you've got bars, and you can set it up to any of these different time bases or time scales. But we're using bars and beats. So let's say I wanted this to come in on bar 9. I would just type in 9. And then I would hit OK. And then you'll see that this audio clip will move and be on bar 9, right? Like that. So that's how you use spot. So spot lets you put something in an exact place on the timeline. And then you have to click out of that in order to click on the timeline. Now, the zoom tool right here, if you click on the, let's get this over here and zoom in. So if you click on the top triangle, it makes the waveform bigger. And if you click on the bottom triangle, it makes it smaller. And then this increases and decreases the viewing area on the timeline. So in other words, here you could see a lot of space, and here you can zoom in and get into close detail. Now, we don't need the left and right arrow because we have our keyboard focus turned on, and that means that you could use the R key and the T key to make the timeline bigger and smaller. This also works with MIDI notes as well, which we don't really need to do because we don't edit MIDI notes in the timeline here. We use the MIDI editor. Okay, so moving over here into this area, these are our editing tools. So this is a zoomer tool. If you click on this, you can just circle. We haven't really gone through that, but you could just circle in on something. This is your trimmer tool, right? And we've pretty much know how to work that. Everybody's done. Now, the trimmer tool has multiple different functionalities. The only other one that you're really going to need to know is the TCE tool. And I go over that in Audio MIDI 1. But what that enables you to do is that enables you to stretch the audio a little bit, and it will create a new audio file. So if I click on this and do this, now this is slower. But you have to be careful because there are some artifacts on that. It's not as clean as. So if I exaggerated that, right, you can hear that it's got a little, almost like a distortion on some of the notes. It's easier to make something faster than it is to make something slower. Right? So I don't really teach that in this class, but if you get to this point where you've done a mistake and you see that this is the TCE, time compression expansion tool, if you click on this again, you can set it to standard. This is your selector tool. It just allows you to select an area on the timeline. The grabber tool, which also has some other functionality, which we don't use, but we use the time. This way you could grab something and move it around or select it and do another kind of function to it. This is your scrubber tool. So it's almost like moving what it does is it gives you the impression that you've got both hands on two tape reels on a reel-to-reel, and you're manipulating the tape back and forth across the audio playback head, right? And the reason that was done, old school, is that's how you would find the edit point to use a razor blade to cut the tape with. The chance of you guys having to use that is like next to none, unless you really get deep into this. I mean, I've been doing this for years, and I don't have a tape machine in my studio. I've been thinking about getting one because I want to use it as an effect possibly, but I've lived without one for 20 years. Yeah, not necessary these days. Okay, and then the last one up here is the pencil tool, and we use this to draw in automations. And on audio, the only ones that really work easily are the random, square, triangle, line, and freehand. And I would suggest, until you get really good at drawing things, you use the line tool. So let's say I wanted to draw in a fade in. on this drum track. What I would do is go to volume right here, and then I've got my pencil, and I can just draw in, boom, and now this will fade in over one measure. And then I can fade it out. Right? If I were to do that with freehand, freehand is useful, but you have to be practiced to be able to do that. So that's not a bad freehand. Right? And then the other shapes are useful for doing special effects. So you can do almost like a tremolo effect now. Right? And then you could do the same thing with triangle. Right, so you're doing these cool rhythmic effects with volume. That's one thing. You can also do it with, if you set this up with panning, right? This has two pans. It's a little trickier but with a mono audio signal, you can have it panning left and right with triangle. And then the random, this will start looking like a city skyline, I mean. And you just have to play around with them, you know, and get used to what they do. So those are your edit tools. The only other thing over here that you really need to concern yourself with when you're editing audio is this little guy right here. And this means tab to transient. And when that's on and you're in slip mode, if you put the playback head here and you hit the tab key on your computer keyboard, the tab key right here, the playback head will go right to the transient. So if I hit the tab key, you see that it goes right to the beginning of that. If I'm here, hit the tab key, the blinking line will go right here. Right, so it's a good way to get a good starting point if you're going to do some audio editing. So let's do that again. So hit the tab key. So if I wanted to edit that out, tab, edit this, and then delete that. Actually, let me show you something. So I've got that highlighted. I might want to do something to that, right? So I haven't talked about this, but this is Audio Suite. This will do a destructive edit. So if I go to Other, then there's something called Reverse. And if this is separated out, right, it has to be a separate audio clip. It can't be, you know, you just picking a selection. And I hit that, it will reverse that. Right, did you hear that? So I could do that with something a little bit more dramatic. So if I separated this out here, that's clearly a snare drum. So Command E, make that a separate clip and reverse render this. You'll notice, see how the waveform has changed its direction. And let's say I want to do this one, right? If I just hit render now, oh, actually that's new. Wow, you can just highlight it and render. That's a new function. That never used to be like that. I just upgraded my Pro Tools recently to a more recent version. So, you know, that's, and just realize that it's destructive, but it's not really destructive, because if you take the trim tool and you just drag it across, you get back the original. It's not really destructive. It's just making a new file and placing it in that spot. But you can always get back the original. So you could just drag this like this and it's the original file. So that's kind of cool. All right, so this is our counter up here. And the counter has multiple time bases because multiple people use Pro Tools, right? Pro Tools is not just used by people creating music. It's I would say that Pro Tools right now, like 20 years ago, Pro Tools was probably the most used software. In the interim, other pieces of software have bypassed Pro Tools in certain areas. For working on audio, Pro Tools is like really the best for standard stuff. Ableton is really good if you want to do sound design in a certain way, but the MIDI functionality of Pro Tools, while it's very good, it's not as good as Logic or Cubase or Digital Performer. But when you're working in a professional studio, you don't really need those things. So people just still work in Pro Tools in professional studios. But where Pro Tools is still king, and I don't see it losing its king status in the foreseeable future, is in film and television post-production, because it handles large sessions incredibly well. It syncs up very well. It's perfect for that. You know, it really does a great job with that kind of stuff. And those people, they don't need to see a time base in bars and beats and ticks. They need to see minutes and seconds, or film and television. They need to see a time code, feet and frames for people doing Foley, which is Foley is an art which has been superseded a little bit by sound effects libraries. But they have people called Foley artists that work on a soundstage where they watch the film, and let's say somebody's walking, they mimic that person's walking, and they mic up the floor so they catch the shoe. Or if like a glass, somebody's pouring a glass of wine, they don't have a microphone on the wine when they're filming that, right? The glass, the bottle, and the glass. What they do is they have somebody in the studio with a microphone, and somebody opens up a bottle of wine and pours it into a glass. They record that, and they place it on the timeline, right? So feats and frames and samples and those kinds of things are useful with that, especially like when people are creating multiple layered audio file tracks to create like an explosion or the sound of thunder or all sorts of stuff, right? Those other time-based modes are good for that, but they're not really necessary for what we do. So we're with bars and beats. Now, everybody understands that the first number here is the measure number. The second number is the beat in that measure. And the third number, or three numbers, is the subdivision of the beat. And we went over this before, and in Pro Tools and every other DAW that I know of, they have something called ticks. And that is the resolution of the beat. How many spaces between each beat there are where a note, a MIDI note, can land. So Pro Tools has 960 subdivisions of every beat. So that means between every quarter note in Pro Tools, there are 960 spots where a note can be placed. Okay? And that's a pretty high resolution. Logic, I think, has twice that. Cubase has 10 times that. I'm not sure if the higher resolution is audible, but it's possible. You know, I do know it probably takes up more processing power to have that many ticks. But anyway, when I first started sequencing with a hardware sequencer, I had 24 subdivisions per quarter note on my little hardware sequencer. So you could really feel how stiff that was. You know, so, and then my next hardware sequencer had 96, and then, you know, the one after that had 192, and then my first computer sequencer had 192, and then eventually they all moved up to 960, which I think is the minimum that they have now. So in that 960 number, that means the way it's divided up is the first subdivision, or the downbeat, every beat starts with 3 zeros, right? So that is the quarter note, that is the first eighth note, that is the first eighth note triplet, and that is the first 16th note of every bar, the first 32nd note, etc. Starts with 3 zeros. The second eighth note is half of 960, which is 480. So that's so this would be the 1. Let me write that out. 1, and this would be and. So 1 and. So 0, 0, 0 is 1, 480 is and. So you're counting 1 and 0, 0, 0, 480. 0, 0, 0, 480. That's how that works. So that if you've got bar 2, beat 1, 480, that is the second eighth note of the second measure of the first beat, the second eighth note. If this was 2 and 0, 0, 0, that would be bar 2, beat 1, first eighth note. And the same with 16th notes, so that the first 16th note is 0, 0, 0. The second 16th note is 240. Whoops, excuse me. Hello. The third 16th note is the same as the second eighth note. That's 480. And the last 16th note is 720. You never get to 900, the number 960, because it starts on 0, 0, 0. So it gets to 959, and then it flips over again. Right? So let me show you what I mean by that. Let me whip out the big counter here. The big counter. It's big. It's ginormous. So if I type in 960 here, you're going to see this change to 2. If I type in 959, right, the 2 stays. So if I go right here and I type in 959, that's just before beat 2. But so from 000 to 959 is 960 different digits, because you're not starting on 1, you're starting on 000. Okay, so we went over ticks in class. This is just a review. Now, this little area right here, this shows you the selection. So if I select from here to here, you'll see that it says it starts at bar 2, beat 3, ends at bar 3, beat 1, and that it's 2 beats long. So that will show you that. That's pretty cool. Right here is turning the grid on and off. So if that's not lime green, there is no grid. If that is lime green, there is a grid. And then you change your grid resolution here. And again, the grid resolution can be all these different time bases, right? So half note, whole note. Now let me just show you something here. So I've got this set to 16th notes, right? Let me delete this for the time being. So if I go back to the beginning, you notice that at bar 1, beat 1, we're here. At bar 1, beat 2, we're here. Every quarter note has a darker colored grid. The subdivisions have a lighter colored grid, so that when you zoom out, you can see, right, that this is like every measure has a darker one, every quarter note has just a little bit lighter, and every 16th note has lighter. So that when you zoom out, you can just, it changes, so that now it's like every 8 bars, you'll see like a darker one, and then it has each individual measure is lighter, but you don't see the 16th notes until you start zooming in, excuse me. And then you'll see that it'll start to change as you get closer and closer and closer to the spot where your cursor is. So that's a little interesting way that they change the timeline. Now, if we had our transport here, we went over this before. If you want to punch in recording, you would set your pre-roll. And let's say I wanted to start recording at measure 5, right? I've played something really well. Let's say this is an audio track. I've played something really well at measure 5 until measure 5. What I want to do is go to slip mode and start my punch in just a little bit before measure 5, because if I come in early, which all of you are most likely to do, you won't clip off the beginning. It's only going to start recording where you tell it to start recording. So if you tell it to start recording at measure 5 and you come in a fraction of a second before measure 5 with your playing, it's not going to record that. It's going to snip that off. All right. So basically you put the playback head a little bit before where you want to come in. You've got your pre-roll at 2 bars, and then you just hit the record button. Well, I got to record enable the track. And then, oh, well, hold on. And then, let me do this. So it started at basically measure 3, and then it started recording right here. All right, and then that's been recorded. And that's how you can play along with, you can play along and start recording. Now, if you're recording audio, you have to have input. You have to have this eye on so that you can hear it as it's playing back. I went over that last week, and so I'm still up here. Let me do this in in order. This is the transport. It's like a tape machine. You don't have to worry about this so much. I would prefer that you use the keyboard commands and get used to doing on the keyboard rather than having your mouse and getting here. And to be honest with you, I would prefer, there's ways to navigate through this whole area up here using keyboard commands. So, for example, right here, right, I'm not using my mouse right now. I'm hitting F1, F2, F3, F4, and then I'm navigating here. And then if I hold down the command key and hit 1, it's this. So in other words, let me show you what I'm doing. I'm holding down the command key, and then I'm hitting these numbers here, and then it's going through my tools. So I'm hitting the command key, and 1 is the magnifying glass, the zoom tool. Command and 2 is the trimmer. 3 is the selector. Command and 4 is the grabber. Command 5 is scrub. Command 6 is the pencil tool. Now, what's really cool is if you hold down the command key and you keep hitting the number 6, right, it's going to scroll through the different. Let me zoom in on that so you can see it as it's happening. Okay, so let's check out our pencil tool. So I'm holding command and I'm hitting the number 6, and you see it goes through all the different shapes. So that's freehand, line, triangle, square, random, parabola, and S-curve. So that's cool. That's easy. That's an easy way. It's easier to just learn how to do that, and you can do that with one finger, right? Rather than taking the mouse and dragging the mouse up to the screen and then clicking on it and clicking on it again. Learning how to operate the computer keyboard as an instrument will really help you to make it feel like you're playing Pro Tools, Logic, Cubase, Reaper, any DAW you use going forward after this class. Learning how to knowing your key commands, your keyboard shortcuts, or whatever they call them, is a key to that. So you see that little thing back there with numbers? Does anybody have an idea what that is? In the back of the room here, it's changing numbers, 56, 55, 52. That is a decibel meter. It lets me know how loud the music and any sound in my room is so that I don't blow my ears out by listening to loud music all day long. It's just a warning reminder. So the only thing that's happening now is my big mouth, and yeah, it's causing it to jump up and down a little bit. Okay, let's continue on. Over here are our MIDI controls. Now, for doing MIDI, we can do count off of 2 bars, and then it'll start playing and recording. We've gone over that. This lets you know the tempo that you're at. This lets you know the meter that you're at. And this is wait for note recording, which I used to teach with wait for note recording, but it's gotten wacky. So I teach now using count off. This turns the metronome on and off, the click track. This is MIDI merge, which everybody, I think we know what that is. That means you can record something with MIDI and then record over it. So let me just do a quick example of that. Stereo track preset. So if I record this and just, I'm just going to play something. Hold on a second. So I'm just going to play something freehand here. Oh, come on. Oh, my pre-roll is still on. Let me turn that off. Here we go. Right, so I've recorded that, and then if I have this on MIDI merge, right, it recorded those bass notes without erasing what I had previously recorded. So just make sure that you're aware of when this is on or off, or you'll be wondering why it's not recording over what you've played. So in other words, if I want to do another take and not keep that one, I turn that off, and you see how it's erasing what I've already played, and then it'll replace it with that. And then this last bit here turns the conductor track on and off. Right? So that's when you automate the tempo. Now, this area here are our rulers, and we've set those up. Most of you guys have this set pretty well. I think in the other class, there's some people that still, I have to tell them every class and every feedback video to set this up properly. But basically, all you need to see here, you don't need to see feet and frames. Minutes and seconds can help, but markers, tempo, and meter. And I'm not sure if I've gone over markers with you this semester. I can do that next week. So this lets you, this shows you what's happening on your timeline. This tells you the bar and beat, and it tells you how long it is, whether this is like 8 seconds in, this is 10 seconds in over here. So you can keep track of that. This gives you an idea of what your tempo is, so that let's say at measure 8, you want a new tempo. You click on this and you change it to, let's say you change it to 60. You want a big dramatic change, right? You can see here that it changes to 60. And then let's say at measure 10, you want a new tempo and you want to go back up to 85. Right, you could see right here on your ruler here, your tempo ruler, that you've got this. And let's say right here at this spot here, you want to change your meter from 4/4 to 6/8. You could see on your ruler that that's happening. And then right here, you can go back to 4/4. Maybe you want to go to 5/4. Let's do that. 5/4. So on that meter ruler, you can see that. Now, there's another thing called markers, and I don't think I went over that, correct? And this is where you can set up the different sections of your piece. So let's imagine that I've got a piece of music written, right? And at measure 1, I have an intro. So if I hit the Enter key on my computer keyboard, or the return key, I believe. No, just the Enter key. Okay. If I hit the Enter key on my keyboard, and if you don't have an Enter key, make sure that you're at the bar number that you want to have a marker at, and then hit the plus sign here. But I can just hit the Enter key on my keyboard here like this. And then this shows up with a new memory location. And for what we're doing in our class, you can just leave everything to default. Okay. And then you could put this as, let's say this is the intro. Okay. And then let's say at measure 5, you have your first verse. And then at measure 13, you can have verse 2. And then let's say at measure 21, you can have the chorus. Now, what's kind of cool about this is that you can then navigate, right? So if I do on the, this is why having an extended keyboard is really great for doing any kind of DAW work, because if I do decimal point, 1 decimal point, it will take me back to the intro, decimal point 2, decimal point to verse 1, decimal point 3 to decimal point, decimal point 3, decimal point will take me to the next bit. So let me show you what I mean. So if I do decimal point 1, decimal point, I went back to bar 1. Decimal point 2, decimal point, I've gone to verse 2. Decimal point 3, decimal point, I've gone to verse 2. Right, so I can, like for intro, I can just scroll through. Now if I want to go back to the intro, decimal point 1, decimal point, if I want to go to the chorus, and there is a window here which is called memory locations, which is Command and 5 on the numeric keypad. And then this comes up and this shows you where everything is. Then you can always just click on this and it will scroll through as well. Now, the other thing you can do is you can also change the color. Notice how they've got colors here. They have colors here because at the very beginning of the class, we went to preferences and we have always display marker colors selected, which is kind of cool. And while I'm here, let's go over this one more time, our preferences. We set our preferences up so that the tooltips function in details, right? You all should have this. We organize our plugin menus by category and manufacturer, and then I'm using the classic theme. If you've got a newer version of Pro Tools, you can have a different theme. You see that, and it changes the background. I don't care what you use. It doesn't matter to me. But some of you have the older school versions of Pro Tools. We don't have that. We will in the fall. We're upgrading Pro Tools this summer. We've been just waiting. So then over here, this is the way that I like to set up this particular column. Always display marker colors. MIDI note color shows velocity. The default track color coding is tracks and MIDI channels, and the default clip color coding is track color. And this is good to know, and I'm going to take a screenshot of this and send it to you, because if somebody else sends you a session and they've got different preferences, it's going to change these, and you do need to know how to get them back. It's like really a pain in the neck. Let me just get you that in the chat. There you go. So if you want to get that. Okay, so you can also change the color of the markers. So let me zoom in. Okay, so if you double click on this border here, it'll show you the color palette. Let's see, is there? Yeah, so and you can also get to the color palette right here. There's no key command for color palette, which is really stupid. So if you pick this up, right, you could see that it has markers. So if you set up for markers and I select this first marker, it's sort of that green color. If I want to make it red, I can click. Oh, it just did well, I did that backwards. Hold on a second. So I click on that and I change the color, and there it changes. Click on that, or double click, or just click on that once and then change the color. So you could change these colors to whatever you like as well. And what I do, which is kind of cool, let me show you how I use those. Let me save this and we'll come back to this. But with this film I just finished, at the end of the day, I had to make a Pro Tools session that had stems for every cue. So that meant that if I had 120 tracks, I had to reduce that down to, like, depending upon the cue, anywhere from 4 to 10 stereo tracks. So all my strings were on one track, all my brass, maybe I selected high brass and low brass, and maybe my strings were short strings and long strings. And, you know, so that it was just easier to mix. So I mixed everything, got it to a good space, but still gave the guy who was the engineer a little bit of control over the mix to balance it with the dialogue. But in order to keep things nice and organized, let's say I opened up Act 1, right? And let's open this. Okay, I have to quit Pro Tools because of that stupid changing the sample rate. It actually is really cool because it's just another way of organizing things so that you can visually look at something and know where you are. You know, it's really works out well. So I'll show you what I mean in a second as this thing's opening up. It's still loading. So the reason that this is taking so long to load is that there's just a lot of stuff in it. And I have to make all this active. All right, so you see here, right? These Q1, 1M1 is blue. The marker is blue. When I go to my next cue, this is green. These audio tracks are green. Right? So all of these markers are coordinated with the color of the cue. And that just gives you a nice visual representation when you're looking at stuff. So these are just, you know, some of my organizational tips. And, you know, they make the sessions look really pretty to look at. And they're visually appealing for the engineer to be able to easily go through all this stuff and see where everything is. He knows that this is Q3. So this is 1, 2, 3. So if he wants to get to Q3, it's decimal point, 3 decimal point. And he's there to play it.
Because you guys scared us.
Let me turn off the dialogue. That's classified information. I have to snuff all you out if you heard it. No, I'm only kidding. Okay, so, right? So that's Q3. And if I wanted to do Q2, and why that's really great is that I can quickly go back and forth to all the cues without using the mouse, and then I can make sure that over the timeline of 12 minutes, the 12 minutes of that first act of that film, that all the volume is even, right? That one cue isn't like twice as loud as the one before it. So you can go back and forth very quickly with just a couple of key presses. And that's really very, 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 very helpful for the kind of work that I do outside of school. For my main focus of work, which is writing film music. All right, let's, okay. So let me show you about, while I'm here, this is more advanced and it's a little tangential, but let me just show you some of this stuff. Let me make these bigger. And let me fit this in here. So this is my first cue, right? And I've got this broken up. There's a track with just has big drums, right? And that's just my keyboards. This is pitched percussion, which is over here. Right, so that's celeste and harp. Right, so I made groups. So I don't have those instruments separate. I've got them on one track. And I don't need to have them separate. I'm happy, that's fine. They don't need to be separate. I'm trusting that I did a good job with the mix, which comes from experience. If I need to adjust those, I can always go back to the original session and separate them out and work on it. So I've got, you know, a diary where I've kept, and I've talked about that with making different versions as you're working and how important that is. Right? So then the next track is a choir over here. Oh, that also has a solo violin on it. Oh, no, it doesn't. Yeah, there we go. And then there's this thing called Slate Nash, which is like sound design orchestra. And then I've got my solo strings here. Right here. And then I've got, right, so the way I broke my orchestral strings out is right here I've got low strings short. So those are pizzicato and colegno strings. And then I've got sustained strings right here. Right. And the reason that I separate them out into those two categories is that you need less, with these samples that I'm using, you need less reverb on short string articulations, because if you play the note, all the professional libraries that I use have room tone in them, and you hear that reverberation. With the long notes, you don't hear the room tone as much, so you might want to drown them with a little bit more reverb to make them sound a little smoother. So that's sort of the reason why I separate out the short strings and the long strings in a piece like this. So that's one cue, and then if we go to our next cue, here I've separated, I've got a couple of different instruments here. So I've got, in this right here, I've got hand percussion, castanets, right, and then more big drums right here. And then pitched percussion. So that's got a marimba, Glock, and harp. And then I've got keyboards. So that's a felted piano. And then over here, electric piano. And then more vocals. So, you know, I've got my winds as all my winds here. High brass. Oh, I don't know why low winds got moved here. Who knows? I think my friend Ken, who did the final mix. And then my low string short. And then everything together. Anyway, all right, so that's, you know, that's, markers are really great. You can organize and do all sorts of stuff. If you want to put markers in your final, you can certainly do that. I go over that more in Audio MIDI 1. Yeah. Let's open up so now I'm going to quit Pro Tools and then. I'm going to open up the last session that we were working on. Okay, so the other thing about preferences to know how to set up. Let me go to my preferences window here. If you go to the MIDI tab, so it typically defaults to the display tab. If you scroll over to the MIDI tab, automatically create click track and new sessions. All right, make sure that that's on and you will always get a click track in a new session. And if it doesn't come up, you'll know how to fix that. And if your session opens up without a click track, you can just go to track and the very bottom selection adds your click track. And the click track is the reference point that we use because we're basically creating something like a one-man band or a one-woman band. We're creating something, and we need a reference point for everybody to play off of. There are other techniques besides a click track, but a click track is a good start. I like to sometimes have a click track and maybe a drum track to play along to, because the drum track might have a feel to it that I like to capture. So that's like another strategy for creating a piece of music, is to get something like a really cool drum track up and play along to that, and that'll give you a nice something to groove with, as opposed to just the sterile click track. But learning how to play to a click track is an essential component of being a modern musician for all of you graduate students and anybody who's in this class who's a music major. All right, so it's about 6 o'clock. That's about as far as I wanted to go today. Now, hopefully all of you are handing something in, and I will spend time on it tomorrow and get it back to you, your first draft. I believe there's another one due next week, and then the final one the week after that. So next week is our last class, and I'm going to pick up from here with review and go over MIDI and audio a little bit more. Are there any questions? And I'll get this review video up in the morning as well. Are there any questions on any of this? No? I feel I'm only going to be teaching film scoring next semester, but we are offering audio MIDI 2 and this class again. And then Jim McElwain is offering his digital recording and composition 1 class. So if any of you are MAP students, you would be registering for Jim's class. But any graduate student here is eligible to sign up for film scoring, and it's a really, really good class. It's actually my favorite class to teach, and it really is better online than me teaching it in person. And it will be online Wednesdays from 4:40 to 7:30. I've watched students do amazing stuff over the course of the semester with that class, and then with this class too. You guys started out nowhere, and I'm seeing drastic improvement. A couple of you have still some issues that we need to sort through, but hopefully after this week that'll get taken care of with some appointments with Justin. And your work has been overall, well done. The mixing of the stems mix, I thought everybody did a pretty good job with that. In general, a couple of you had some issues, but overall, well done. It sounded good. You picked up on the concepts and everything like that. So again, this is just a survey class to get your feet wet in this study. I'm cutting back my teaching schedule starting in the fall. Instead of teaching 2 classes, I'll only be teaching 1 class going forward, at least for the fall semester, and then make a decision during the fall semester. I've been teaching for 10 years, and it's time to they rethink the future a little bit for me. But anyway, like I said, I've seen people make really good progress so far. So hopefully, you'll continue on with your final project, and I can give everybody good grades this semester, because I certainly don't like to be the Grim Reaper. That's not my job. That's not how I handle this. Also, there's a songwriting class taught by Robbie Merkin on Friday and on Fridays at 1:40. That'll be online, and I know that Casey's taking that class, and all the students taking that class really like it. I know some students are actually taking it a second time. We worked out a deal where you could take the same class twice and get credit for both classes, just with a different registration number. So that's also a really, really interesting class if you've got time. I know it's difficult because the way that the college is set up, it's hard to take electives. I do know that. All right, everybody, you have a great weekend, and I'm going to start going over those final projects tomorrow morning. So get them up. Double check that you've got your audio files in your audio files folder inside of your session folder. Check that you've done that, so that I'm not disappointed trying to find because I won't be able to find your audio files on my computer. All right, everyone. Catch you later. Have a good night.